He regained his sight at the altar, then realized his bride was an imposter. For 7 long years, darkness was all he knew, until the miracle happened at the very moment he said, "I do." As light flooded his world again, Nick turned eagerly to finally see his beloved's face, only to freeze in horror. The woman beside him wasn't his fiancée. It's a shocking tale of obsession, betrayal. The truth waiting to be uncovered will leave you breathless. This isn't just a wedding gone wrong. Before we move on to the rest of the story, tell us in the comments where you are watching from right now. The air in Lord's Chapel hung thick with silence. Not peaceful, but charged, as if the room itself was holding its breath. All eyes were locked on Nick, the groom, poised in his sleek charcoal tuxedo, a single white rose gleaming at his lapel. His stance was steady, but his fingers shook, not with anxiety, but with the sheer weight of longing for this moment. 7 years of darkness had followed the crash that stole Nick's sight, leaving him in a world of muffled voices and shapeless light. No one expected him to stand here now unassisted, surrounded by loved ones and strangers alike. Samantha Young, a 28-year-old book lover who volunteered at Flowerfield Recovery Center, had become Nick's guiding light. When they first met at the center, her voice wrapped around him like a warm embrace, cutting through the darkness that had enveloped him since the car accident. During their evening walks by the river, she'd paint vivid pictures with her words: moonlight dancing on the water's surface, ancient oaks draped in wispy moss like nature's lace curtains. She brought the world to life for him, describing the candy-colored houses at sunrise and the city's evening symphony of sounds. Her calm, unwavering tone became his anchor during stormy moments of despair. What began as simple volunteer sessions blossomed into something deeper: shared secrets, quiet companionship, and eventually a love Nick had stopped believing was possible for him. Whispers in empty hallways, laughter beside spilled coffee, endless conversations under the oaks, the sun warm on their skin. He could never see her face, often scoffing with the words, "Only if I could see you." Who knew Nick's wish would come true on the day of his wedding, with extra twists that shocked everyone in chapel? Vibrant shards of light spilled from the antique stained glass, painting the marble floor in shifting hues. The wooden pews, gleaming under the soft glow, led like a pathway to the oak altar, where white lilies and magnolias perfumed the air, thick, sweet, intoxicating. In the corner, the delicate strains of a string quartet hummed, each note trembling with unspoken promises. Pastor Andrew Wells, silver-haired, his blue eyes crinkled with warmth, studied Nick with quiet understanding. "Nick," he began, voice rich with solemnity, "do you take Samantha as your lawfully wedded wife, to love, to cherish, in shadow and in light, for all the days you are given?" Nick drew a slow breath. The past flickered behind his eyelids, the screech of metal, the crushing dark, the hollow ache of despair. Then, her voice in the stillness, her hands pulling him back. He let the memories fade, anchoring himself in the warmth of her presence beside him. "I do." The words were firm, weighted with more than vows, with a second chance. A murmur of applause swept through the chapel, family dabbing their eyes in the front, old classmates grinning in the middle, and curious strangers in the back, drawn by the whispered possibility of something extraordinary. Samantha's hand found his, her fingers cool and delicate beneath the lace of her gloves. Nick exhaled, memorizing the weight of her touch, the quiet certainty of this moment. Then, the world cracked open. Pain seared through his skull, white-hot and sudden. His breath hitched, head jerking back as if pulled by an invisible wire. For one dazzling instant, everything was light. Then, like a curtain torn away, color exploded into view. Shapes blurred, then sharpened. Faces materializing from the haze, stained glass resolving into intricate patterns, the chapel vaulting upward in impossible detail. His chest tightened. "I can see," he choked out. The chapel stilled. Pastor Wells's mouth felt open. The violins stuttered into silence. And Samantha, she went perfectly still, as if the universe itself had paused to listen. Nick turned toward the woman beside him, heart pounding with anticipation, After years of knowing her only through touch and sound, he would finally see Samantha's face. The world came into sharp focus, and his blood ran cold. The woman holding his hand wasn't Samantha. His legs gave way, sending him crashing to the altar steps. "This isn't her," he choked out. A wave of whispers surged through the chapel. Programs rustled, phones clicked. The bride's polished smile faltered. Her fingers, too thin, too smooth, twitched against his. Nick stared, desperate to be wrong. Brown eyes, but not her rich hazel. High cheekbones, but not the soft curve he'd traced countless times. "Nick, darling," the woman cooed, her voice honey-sweet yet unfamiliar. "You're scaring me." That voice. That wrong voice. Samantha's laughter had been warm whiskey. This was cheap perfume. He staggered to his feet, vision swimming. "Where is she?" The demand tore from his throat, raw and ragged. Silence answered. Then, like a dam breaking, gasps erupted. Chairs screeched, someone screamed. The stained glass saints looked down in judgment as the imposter's mask finally cracked. Nick's heart pounded. The moment he'd waited for 7 years was slipping into a nightmare. The accident had left Nick drowning in darkness. He pushed everyone away, friends, family, even the sunlight itself, retreating into the suffocating silence of his apartment. Some nights, the phantom pain behind his eyes grew so sharp he'd curl into himself, rocking like a child, convinced he'd never truly see again. Then, like a ray of light piercing the cracks of cave, came Samantha and Flower Field Recovery Center. Samantha, a literature student who spoke poetry like it was her native tongue. She read Neruda to the support group, her voice wrapping around the words like velvet, making his breath catch. She painted the world for him in vivid detail, the molten gold of sunrise, the electric hum of summer nights, the texture of paper beneath his fingers. She was stubborn in her kindness, refusing to let him drown. Their friendship grew in stolen moments, coffee cups clinking, quiet walks along the river, the way her laughter filled the hollow spaces inside him. When he admitted, voice raw, that he wished he could see her face, she paused. Then a Polaroid pressed into his palm. "One day, you'll see me for real," she'd written beneath the image with a hesitant smile, standing before a mural. Nick traced the edges of that photo until they softened with wear. Slowly, without either of them realizing, their bond deepened. A hug lasted too long. A phone call stretched until dawn. The way his chest tightened when she entered the room had nothing to do with sight and everything to do with her. By the time Nick realized he was in love, it was too late. The air in the chapel turned to ice. The woman in white, Rachel Young, 30, Samantha's forgotten twin, took a faltering step forward, her manicured hands outstretched in false concern. "Nick, sweetheart, you're confused." Nick recoiled as if burned. "Samantha hated Dickinson," he snarled. "She called it mourning without the fire. You didn't even know her." Rachel's mask slipped. A muscle twitched in her jaw. For a heartbeat, something dangerous flickered in her eyes. She leaned in, her whisper a razor's edge. "Shut your mouth before—" Rachel Young. The voice cracked like a whip through the chapel. Every head turned. There, framed in the doorway by a halo of sunlight, stood Samantha, her wedding dress torn at the hem, lips split, wild-eyed with adrenaline. A police badge glinted at her hip where she clutched it like a lifeline. 2 officers flanked her, hands resting on their holsters. Nick's knees nearly buckled again. "Sam?" Her breath hitched. "She drugged me," Samantha choked out, swiping at the blood on her chin. "Left me in a storage unit near the docks. I woke up an hour ago." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Rachel went corpse pale. With slow, deliberate movements, she peeled off her veil and let it flutter to the ground. Samantha didn't blink. "Take her." As the officers advanced, Rachel's composure shattered. "You were supposed to disappear," she shrieked. Lunging handcuffs snapped around her wrists. The chapel erupted. Guests surged to their feet. Someone screamed. Through the chaos, Nick stumbled forward, his vision blurring. Not from blindness this time, but from the sheer, staggering relief of seeing her. Really her, for the first time. Samantha met him halfway. Her hands, calloused from years of turning pages, not this imposter's silk-soft lies, found his face. "You can see me," she whispered. Nick crushed her to his chest. The chapel held its breath as Rachel's defiance crumbled into something quieter, something almost like grief. "He didn't fall for your face," she said, her voice cracking. "Just your voice in the dark, your pretty words." Nick's hands shook. "Why?" The word tore from him like a bullet. The story spilled out. A mother's will, a sister's resentment festering for years. While Samantha built a life of poetry and purpose, Rachel had watched from the shadows, starving for the warmth people gave so freely to her twin. And when she learned Nick would marry her twin, Samantha, the plan had been so simple: to ruin her marriage. A sob escaped Rachel as the cuffs bit into her wrists. At the door, she turned back, her whisper carrying across the frozen crowd. "You'll miss the dark one day, when you realize she's just ordinary." Then she was gone. The silence that followed was heavier than the organ's deepest note. Nick dropped to his knees before Samantha, his Samantha, with her split lip and ink-stained fingers. When he opened his mouth, she pressed a trembling hand to his cheek. "Don't," she murmured. "You loved me when I was just air and sound. That's the miracle." He pulled her close, breathing in the scent of sweat and jasmine, real, so real, as her arms wound around his neck. Against his shoulder, he felt the hitch in her breath as she whispered, "Now you see me." And when he drew back to look at the woman he'd loved in darkness, her smile outshone every stained glass saint. The wedding dissolved like mist in morning light. Guests spilled onto the sun-dappled steps of Lord's Chapel, murmurs clinging to them like cobwebs. Inside the emptied sanctuary, Nick and Samantha sat bathed in fractured jewel tones, the stained glass painting their clasped hands in ever-shifting hues. Nick's thumb traced her knuckles. "How far back did this go?" Samantha exhaled through her nose. The truth tasted bitter. "The first time she asked about your condition, I thought it was concern." Her laugh held no mirth. She was taking notes. A muscle jumped in Nick's jaw. "For a second, You knew." She cut him off, pressing their joined hands to her chest where her heartbeat thrummed. "Before you even saw her." His Adam's apple bobbed. "Still." The word hung between them. Frail, human. Samantha kissed his temple. "I'm real." When twilight gilded the windows, Samantha found the box at her doorstep. Velvet. Small. Ominously light. The single envelope inside bore one word in Rachel's looping script. "Forgive." Her breath hitched as the paper whispered open. "Dear Samantha, you always got the happy endings. If you're reading this, you know the real one always wins. Living in your shadow was my burden. You were always the light. I never meant to destroy you, only to be seen. I loved him, even if just enough to pretend. Forgive me, Rachel." The letter trembled in Samantha's hands as the ink blurred beneath her tears. Beyond the window, the river carried fragments of moonlight between flower fields' glowing bridges. Two sisters, Samantha thought, one carried by the current, the other drowning in its depths. When they returned to Lord's Chapel a week later, the stained glass threw prismatic light across Nick's face as he turned to her. "Again," he said. Samantha's pulse stuttered. "What?" His fingers laced through hers, warm, certain. "First I loved you blind. Then I saw you and almost lost you." His thumb brushed her wedding band. "Now I choose you. Every scar, every shadow." The sob caught in Samantha's throat, tasted like redemption. "You waited." "I knew," he corrected. And when their lips met, the chapel erupted in cheers. Not for spectacle, but for the quiet miracle of recognition. By autumn, the Second Vision Foundation bloomed from their wounds. Its glass doors bore a plaque, honoring survivors of those navigating darkness, fighting blindness. And at the bottom, in letters just slightly smaller, Rachel Young. For love that twists into poison can sometimes, with time and terrible grace, become the antidote. And every story deserves its chance at dawn. What would you have done if you were Nick? Would you have noticed the imposter sooner? This story blurs the line between love and obsession. Share your thoughts in the comment down below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing stories like this.